What I want to do in this video is to show you how to use the debugger that's included with Visual Studio. This is a very powerful tool that lets you analyze your code at any point that you want, and it's invaluable when you're trying to figure out what is wrong with your program when it isn't working. I want to start with a simple program. This is just a program that's going to create a table of temperatures. So I have some variables declared, floats for the different temperatures. I've got a start, an end, and an increment value, which will all be input. The program begins by just prompting us to type in the starting temperature, the ending temperature, and the increment between temperatures. Then we use that information inside our for loop, where we will take the Celsius values that are input, and we will generate the Fahrenheit and the Kelvin equivalents, and then we'll just output those to a table. So let's just compile and run the program quickly just to show you what it does. So let's do that. So now the program's running, and it wants the starting temperature. Let's put in 0 degrees Celsius for that. Okay, and then we want the ending temperature. Let's make that 100, and the increment, let's make that 10. Then the information is just taken, and we generate a table here. So now you see the table with the Celsius, the Fahrenheit, and the Kelvin values. So that's a very simple program. Now let's look at how we can use the debugger to analyze the program in case we had something that went wrong along the way. The way that you can use the debugger is you can set what we call breakpoints. So in order to set a breakpoint, you need to move all the way over to the far left where you see this gray bar on the left-hand side. And you can click anywhere that you want over there. So I'll click at, let's say, line number 23. And you'll see a red circle appear. Now this is a breakpoint. When I run the program will execute up to that point, and then it will stop. Then I can continue the program by clicking the green arrow up at the top or hitting the F5 function key. Now you can put in as many of these breakpoints as you want. So let's put several in here. This will stop in 2 places before the loop. Then let's put a breakpoint here at the end of the loop. So you can see that's on the same line as the end of the loop. So now the program is going to stop in 2 places before we get to the loop. Then inside the loop, it's going to stop at the end every time we go through the loop. Now watch what happens when I start up the program. So I'll start it up, and the output window shows up over here. Okay, so the output window, it's expecting me to type in a value for this start, which I'll go ahead and do that. So let's put in 0 for the starting value, and I'll hit enter. Then appears some new stuff appears in our code window. So let me close the Solution Explorer, and I'm going to close this for the time being. I'll come back to that. But notice that in the breakpoint, this red circle, now there's a little yellow arrow there. So the program has executed to this point, and then it has stopped. Okay, so you can see that nothing is happening now because the program is stopped. It's waiting on me to get past the breakpoint. Now, let's examine some information once the program is stopped. Now, it's very easy to see the values of the variables while the program is stopped by just placing the cursor over the variable. So you'll see the value for Celsius is 0. I haven't changed it yet. If I hover over the Fahrenheit, then I get the value for that. And if I hover over the increment, I get the value for that. So once you have a breakpoint in your program, you can hover over a variable and see what its value is at this point in the execution of the program. Now this breakpoint is sitting here at line number 23. It's important to remember that line 23 has not executed yet. The breakpoint will be at the beginning of the line, but it will not execute that line. It's waiting for that to happen. So as you can see from the output here, I don't have the line printed out, enter the ending temperature just yet. But I can proceed to the next breakpoint by clicking the little green triangle or hit the F5 function key. Now, the program has moved down and it's waiting for me to enter the temperature in Celsius. So that line printed, and now it's at the CN waiting for me to type in the ending value. So I'll type in 100 for that, and I'll hit enter, and I'll move this window out of the way. So now we've moved down to the second breakpoint. Okay, so now we have the breakpoint at line 26. So it's waiting for me to type in the increment, but I haven't typed it in yet. So the value is still 0 for that. If I look at end, then you can see the value for end is 100 because I just typed that in. And the starting value is 0 because I just typed that in. So it's very nice. You can put as many breakpoints as you want in here, and whenever your program reaches those breakpoints, it will stop, and it gives you the opportunity to examine the values. And let's see, end is now 100. So see, it initialized to 0, but currently is at 100. Now, I am going to click the little green triangle to make it proceed. And now it's going to ask me to enter the increment. So I'll type in the increment of 10. I'll hit enter. And the first line of the loop executes, and it gives me the values for Celsius, Fahrenheit, and Kelvin. So again, looking at the code window, you can see that we have moved down to the breakpoint here at the end of this loop. Now we can examine all the variables in here. Okay, so let's look at the Celsius value. Well, that's 0. Well, that's what we started with. That's okay. And I've computed the Fahrenheit. So now if the Celsius is 0, we know the Fahrenheit's 32. So we can see that, yeah, that's 32. I've also computed the Kelvin value, so you can see that. And it's easy. Just hover over a value, and you can see what that value is. Each time we go through the loop, then this will change. So I'm going to click the little green arrow again, and we have the second line of the table is output to the screen, and we have hit the breakpoint at the end of the for loop again, and the program stops there. So now we can look at the new values. So now Celsius has moved up to 10, and the Fahrenheit value is 50 for that, and the Kelvin value is the 283.15 for that. So you can see that you can put a breakpoint inside your loop, and as your code executes, then you can examine the values very easily, just by hovering over them. So you don't need to put cout statements in here to track the progress, which is one way of doing the debugging. You could do that. But if you know how to use the debugger, then it's not necessary to put those cout statements in there. You can look at the values as the program goes along. You can stop it anywhere that you want. Let's hover over the temp. We see it's 10. Now, I'm going to go through another time. I'll click the little green arrow, and we move on. Okay, so now we've got the third line. Let's do this a couple more times. Okay, I'll click again, and I'll click again. Okay, so now I've moved on, and we've gone through the loop 5 times, 0, 10, 20, 30, 40. Okay, now once again, let's just examine the values. If I hover over the Kelvin, then I'll see what the value is for it. Okay, Celsius is 40 now, and the Fahrenheit is 104. Now, if you want to see these on screen without having to hover each time, then we can pin them to the screen. Okay, so let's hover over Celsius, and let's carefully come down here and notice the little push pin. If I click that, then it keeps that value up on the screen. So let's keep the Celsius value up here. Let's look at the Fahrenheit. Let's keep it up there. And let's also do the Kelvin. Let's watch all these change. So I'm going to pin all 3 of those to the screen. Now, when I click the little green arrow to move on, to go through the loop again, then you'll see the numbers change. And when they change, they also change color to red. So this time, I have gone through the loop, now moving the Celsius value up to 50, and I've computed the Fahrenheit and the Kelvin. And watch, this will continue to change. If I click the green arrow, then you can see it changes to 60, and the equivalent values of Fahrenheit and Kelvin show up. And I just continue to click the loop, and I click the little green arrow to go through the loop, and we can see the values change. Okay, 7, 80, and 90. And the output's still going out to the screen as well. Okay, so each time we go through, we print the values out to the screen. So then this allows you to examine your variables as your program is executing, stopping it whenever you want to. All right, well, I'm almost at the end of this thing. Now, let's suppose I really wanted to go to 100 and get that last value down here. If I click the arrow one more time, oh, by the way, if you want to take these off, you can just click the X and you can take those off the screen. Okay, so you can take them off like that, and you can put them back on by clicking the little push pin. Okay, so you can change those as you wish. All right, now I'm going to click the little green arrow one last time, and then my program terminates. The loop exits. So I didn't get the 100, and maybe I wanted to get the 100. So that would tell me then that something was wrong here, and it turns out if I wanted to get the 100, I need to make that a greater than or equal sign. So that's no big deal. All right, so that then is how you can use these breakpoints very simply. But if you there's another way you can go about this as well. You can add as many breakpoints as you want. Look, you can just put one on every line if you wanted to. But there's an easier way to do that. If you want to go line by line and see how your code works, then there's an easier way to do that, and that's built into the debugger. So I'm going to remove all of these breakpoints. Okay, I'm going to remove all of that. And if you have something pinned up to the screen, you'll see a little push pin over there. But that's not a breakpoint. It's not going to stop there. But let me take this off. Okay, so I'm going to leave the, let's see, I want to go after I've input all the values. I want to move down to 20, well, the beginning of this. Okay, comments don't count. All right, so I'll take that one off. And now I just have one breakpoint in here. All right, now I'm going to terminate the program. So bring this over. I can hit any key to continue. Okay, so now the program's terminated. Now let's look at another way that we can do the debugging without having to put in lots and lots of breakpoints. So here we see the program, and I only have the one breakpoint, which is at the beginning of the for loop. Now, you know already we could put as many breakpoints in here as we wanted to, but that's kind of cumbersome if you do want to see things happen on every single line. Plus, the debugger provides us with a very convenient way to go through the program line by line. Now, once you have started the program in debug mode, and that's what happens when you click this little green arrow here, it says Local Windows Debugger. Okay, so if you're accustomed to running your programs using the little green arrow or the F5 function key, then you are in debug mode with Visual Studio. Now, let's look at the debug menu. Well, first of all, let's get down to this breakpoint before I bring up the menu, all right? So I'm going to start the program, and we do need to start the program in order to see all the options the debugger has. All right, so I just need to type in the values. So I'm going to start with 50, and I'm going up to 80 for the ending temperature, and I'm going to go by 5 degrees Celsius each time. All right, so now we've moved along, and in the program we've hit this breakpoint. And if you wanted to see the output window, then the output window shows up here. And of course, we are not inside the loop yet, so we don't have any output. Only the stuff that is a preliminary before the loop is what we're seeing on the screen. I want to now go through the loop line by line, one line at a time. And it's very easy to do. You go to the debug menu and you click, and we can't see the whole thing, right? We can't see the whole menu here. So let me slide this over, and you'll see a little bit of blue screen behind it there for a while. But I do the debug, and well, let's try it a little bit more. Still can't see it. Let's scoot it over there. Okay, debug. Now we can see everything. So under debug, if you look at this, there's a huge number of options, and that's not unusual with Visual Studio. You've got dozens and dozens of options for everything. But what we're interested here in here is just these three: the step into, step over, and step out. This allows you to step through your program one line at a time. Now, the step into means you're just, you're into your program, and it goes line by line. And if you happen to come across a function, it will step into that function. So that's what this option does, and you can do this by hitting the F11 function key, and that'll be really a more convenient way to go through this, as you'll see. Now, we don't have functions, but if we did and we wanted to skip over a line that called a function, then we could use the step over option here. This would step over any function call and leave us in our main program. or if we happen to be in a function that calls a function, then we'd stay in that function. So anyway, this steps over calls to functions. Then if we did get into a function and we wanted to get out of it without doing any further debugging, then we could use this Shift and F11 key, or we could select Step Out here. Now in most instances, we're just going to use the Step Into, and we'll look at a function maybe a little bit later on in another video. But now, let's go ahead and get this going. All right, so I'm going to select Step Into. Now, when we come back, you'll see that we have moved from the breakpoint. The little yellow arrow now is moved down, so it's now on line 37. And it will continue to move one line at a time. Remember that this line has not executed yet. When the little arrow is here and when you've stopped, that means that this line has not executed. We can continue to go through this. Let's go to the Debug menu, and let's do Step Into, and you see it moves down. Now, at this point, we have calculated a value for Celsius, and you can see that it has given the value of 50 at this point. And let's go through one more time. If we go to the Debug menu, we select F11, then we move down one more line. So the debugger allows you then to go through the code line by line, and you can see the values by hovering over them as you saw just a few minutes ago. Okay, so we can hover over these. All right, now let's pin some of these to the screen. Okay, let's take the Celsius and let's pin it. Let's take the Fahrenheit, let's pin it, and let's take the Kelvin. So we'll pin these to the screen. Now, I can continue to go with the mouse, debug and Step Into, just keep selecting that. Or I could just start using the F11 function key, which is a lot more convenient. Now, as you see here, we have moved down to the cout statement, and the Kelvin value has been updated, so you'll see that in red. Now, I'm just going to go through a series of key commands here, the function keys, F11, and you'll see here, watch the little arrow, see it goes through, and then we go back to the top of the loop, and I'm hitting the F11 key every time, the F11 function key, and we just cycle through. And as we cycle through, then you can see the numbers change. So you can track what your program is doing by looking at the values of the variables by using this debugger. So if something is wrong in your program, you need to know what the values are. Okay, whatever the case, whether it's a string, it's an array, it's a regular variable like this, you may think your program is doing one thing when in effect it's doing something different. But by using this debugger, you can see exactly what's going on. So I'm going to just continue, and let me bring over the output window so you can see as we progress through the loop, we are getting output also to our terminal window here. Okay, so you can see that. Well, it's nice to be able to hover over the variables and see the values, but what if you'd like to see all of the values at once? Well, the debugger allows us to do that as well. So let's go ahead and let's run through this same example, and we'll look at a different feature that the debugger has. So I'm going to start the program, and we will enter in the beginning values as before. Well, I said 80. I really meant to do 50. So if it's 80, then we'll go from 80 to 120. It doesn't matter, just so the ending is more than the beginning. And that's let's go by 4.0 this time. All right. So now we have entered into our program, and I've still got these things left over, right? I mean, we can see these values that are pinned to the screen. And if you only wanted to see a few of those, that's fine, and you can do it this way if you want. But there's another way that we can look at all the variables instead of just a few, and instead of doing this pinning technique. So I'm going to take off these pinning, these values that are pinned to the screen, and you can see our breakpoint here is at the beginning of the for loop. And we could use the F11 key to cycle through as we did before, so F11. So we move down, so that still works just fine. Now, let's look at a way that we can see all the local variables at once. Go to the debug menu, and again, the window is off the screen a little bit, so let me move my entire thing over so we can see those menus that pop up. Okay, so debug, and we want to go to the windows. And gee, that really stretches out a long way. All right, let's move it over some more. Okay, maybe that's enough room. Okay, debug, and we go to Windows, and over here there's another cascading window that shows up. And look, there's a bunch of stuff here as well. But if you scroll down, then you'll see one option here called Locals. Okay, so this allows us to look at all of the local variables at once. So if I click that, then this other panel shows up. So I'll move this back over so we can see the code window. But now at the bottom you can see we have a list of all the local variables. So we have Celsius, in, Fahrenheit, increment, and if I expand it a little bit, then you can see all of them. So within our program here, we have in this column, we have all of the variables, and we have the values over here, and it even tells us what type over here on the far right. So now as we go through the program, and I need to go down to the loop, I'm going to use the F11 key, and notice at the bottom the values are going to change in this table. Okay, so F11, as we move through, whenever a value is changed, then it shows up as red. So we just changed Fahrenheit. Okay, so then we move on, we computed to Kelvin, so that changes. And I'm hitting F11 here, and we go to the bottom of the loop, and then we cycle through again. So each time we go through the loop with the F11 key, then the values change, and you can see the values here for the variables in this loop. And all the variables that are in the loop show up here at the bottom, as well as the other ones too, like the K that we've got here. What is K? Okay, I just used K for some reason. I'm not sure what. It's declared, but I never use it. All right, so this will be really handy then. If you want to see them all at once, just go to the Debug menu, and you select the Windows option, and then you select Locals from that window. Okay, let's look at that one more time. So I'll move it, whoops, if I can grab something, move it way over here. Okay, so it's under Debug, and it's under Windows, and right down there it says Locals. All right, so that's the choice. Those are the mouse options or menu options that you need in order to make this window show up. If you remember it, okay, the Alt+4 key brings that up as well. So now, this is, I think, even better than just hovering over the values on screen. If you just need to see something quickly, maybe just one time, okay, great, that's good. But if you really got to dig in and see what's going on in your program, then having all the values show up at once here is really nice. All right, so I'm just going to hit the F11 key, and we're going to continue with this. I'm going to go through it here. Here's the third time through. And we'll go through that time, and look, the output still shows up. Okay, so we're still generating the table in our output window. Okay, so we'll continue, and I'll just go through the entire thing. Notice the values down here. And I think this is the, I'm not sure how many times we're going through the loop. Okay, that's 104, it's 108, and here we go again. So again, you can see the values are changing, so it's very easy to see everything at once. Okay, look at the output window. We're going up to 116, so we stopped at 1 here at 116, I think is the last one, because I've got the less than here instead of less than or equal to, so it stops at 1 increment short of the ending value. Now let's look at one other option that we can use in order to trace our variables. I have already started the program up again, and here is what I've typed in. I've got the starting 50, ending 80, increment of 5, and we see that we've hit our first breakpoint here. Okay, so we're inside the program, and I've taken away the locals window that shows up down at the bottom. This time, I want to show you how you can track very specific variables. So to do that, I'm going to show you one more menu option, and to see the menus, I again need to move this window way over here so we have room for that window, the menus to pop up. So again, it's under Debug. So if we click Debug, and it's under Windows again, and if we go all the way over to the left, right close to the locals, you'll see something called Watch. Okay, now actually this has popped up even further off screen. So let me move this over even more, these cascading menus take up a lot of space. Okay, one more time. Okay, debug, Windows, and we move down to watch, and another cascading panel shows up. So here you have something called watch 1, 2, 3, and 4. All right, so you can have actually 4 different windows if you wanted to. So I'm just going to select watch 1. Okay, so remember it's under Windows, scroll down to watch, and then here is the choice. So you click watch 1, and then we have the panel show up at the bottom again. All right, so moving this back over, then you can see here that there are 3 things here that are showing up, and that's because I had those previously. But here's what you can do. Okay, you can type in the variable that you want, right? So what if I wanted to track temp? I just type in T-E-M-P. Okay, I want to track that one. And if I wanted to, I could delete one. Okay, so I just hit the delete key. Fahrenheit's highlighted. I hit delete. And let's just delete this temp and start from scratch, all right? So you get this, and you click, and you can type in the variable. Okay, type in temp. Okay, yeah, I want that one. Then if you want more, you just click, and you could type it in. So let's do Celsius. We'll look at Celsius. All right, and hit enter. And then let's do one more. So I'm going to do Fahrenheit. Okay, F-A-H-R-E-N-H-E-I-T. Hit enter. So now I'm only going to trace those 3. Now you can go through the program the same way that we've been going through it, one line at a time. And if you wanted to, you could still have breakpoints and just use the green arrow and go from breakpoint to breakpoint and still have these windows up. So these windows here are not dependent on how you want to go through the program. You can go line by line, or you can go through a series of breakpoints if you'd prefer. I'm just going to go line by line, so I want to make sure I am in this window, and I'll just hit the F11 key. And you can see already as we go through, then these values, as they change, will go red. And you keep up with the values for temp, and the new values will be red. And we just keep going. Okay, so now the newest one is Fahrenheit, 122. And then as we go through the loop, we print out the value, and that shows up in the output window. So that's still going out according to the cout statement. It goes to our output window. Okay, but then we come back in here, and we just move line by line, and we can only see the output for the variables that we choose. So if you'd like, you can just bring up this watch window and list only the variables that concern you. So that's a neat way to do it as well. All right, so I'm not going to go any further. Here I'll go through this a couple of times. Now let's suppose that, okay, I've debugged all I want to debug here. Okay, I've seen what the program's doing. If I need to fix it, I can go fix it. Well, you can also delete your breakpoints if you wanted to. You can go back to the debug, and again, you can't see everything, so let's move it over. Okay, so you can go back to the debug, and if you wanted to, then you could come down here and you can delete the breakpoints from this menu as well. Okay, you can click them, and in this window you could click it to remove it. Or if you had several breakpoints in here, then you can remove them all at once from the debug menu if you wanted to, just by going in here and say delete all breakpoints. And it tells me, do you want to? I'll say yes, and now they're gone. All right. Then if you wanted your program then to just completely finish up, you can click the green arrow, and your program will finish like that. So we're all done. All right, so those are several options then that are available to you through the debugger.